It's 12:55 a.m., February 3rd, 1943. The SS Dorchester is steaming through the North Atlantic, 150 miles south of Greenland. Below deck, 902 men are packed into compartments designed for half that number. Most are sleeping in their clothes, boots laced tight, life jackets within arm's reach. The ship's heating system barely works. The temperature outside is 36 degrees Fahrenheit. The water temperature is 34 degrees, cold enough to kill a man in 18 minutes. Then the torpedo hits. German submarine U-223, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Karl Jürgen Wächter, has been tracking the convoy for hours. The torpedo slams into the Dorchester's starboard side below the waterline, punching through the hull and detonating in the engine room. The blast kills dozens instantly. The lights die. Steam lines rupture. Fuel oil floods the lower decks. The ship immediately lists to starboard. In the chaos, 4 men move with purpose. 4 Army chaplains, representing 4 different faiths, are about to make a decision that will define American military chaplaincy for the next 80 years. Captain George L. Fox, Methodist minister from Vermont. Age 42. World War I veteran who'd lied about his age to enlist at 15. Fox had served in France, survived trench warfare, gone home, become a pastor, raised a family. When Pearl Harbor hit, he re-enlisted. His son had just joined the Marines. Fox told his wife he couldn't ask his son to serve while he stayed home. Rabbi Alexander D. Goode, Jewish chaplain from Brooklyn. Age 31. Goode had his doctorate in Oriental languages and philosophy. He'd volunteered immediately after Pearl Harbor, despite having a wife and young daughter. His congregation had tried to convince him to stay. He'd refused. Someone needed to be there for the Jewish soldiers, he'd said. Reverend Clark V. Poling, Dutch Reformed minister from Ohio. Age 32. Son of a famous evangelical preacher. Poling could have avoided military service. He had a wife, a son, and flat feet that should have disqualified him. He'd fought through the medical examination until they accepted him. His father had been an Army chaplain in World War I. Poling felt obligated to follow. Father John P. Washington, Roman Catholic priest from New Jersey. Age 34. Irish-American kid who'd grown up in Newark's immigrant neighborhoods. Washington had been ordained in 1935, served in parishes around New Jersey, then enlisted after Pearl Harbor. He told his family that soldiers needed spiritual guidance, especially in combat. The 4 had met during chaplain training at Harvard. Despite their different backgrounds, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, they'd become close friends. They'd boarded the Dorchester together at Camp Miles Standish in Massachusetts on January 23rd. The ship was a 5,649-ton civilian coastal steamer converted into a U.S. Army transport. It wasn't built for North Atlantic winter crossings. It sure as hell wasn't built to survive torpedo attacks. The Dorchester was part of convoy SG-19, 3 cargo ships, and the Dorchester escorted by 3 Coast Guard cutters. Destination: Greenland, to relieve troops at American bases there. The North Atlantic in February 1943 was the most dangerous water on the planet. German U-boats were winning the Battle of the Atlantic. In January and February 1943 alone, U-boats would sink over 120 Allied ships. Every man on the Dorchester knew the risks. The chaplains had held services every day of the voyage. Fox, Goode, Poling, and Washington took turns leading prayers for different faiths. They'd joked together, played cards, talked about their families back home. Now, in the darkness below deck, with water flooding in and men screaming, those 4 chaplains were about to demonstrate what interfaith cooperation actually meant. Real quick before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? And hey, what time is it where you are? Always cool to see how global this audience is. All right, let's get into it. February 1943 was the worst month of the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boats were operating with near impunity. Admiral Karl Dönitz had over 400 submarines in service, and his Wolfpack tactics were devastating Allied convoys. In January alone, U-boats sank 37 merchant ships. February would be worse. 63 Allied ships totaling over 350,000 tons sent to the bottom. The math was brutal. German shipyards were building U-boats faster than the Allies could sink them. For every U-boat destroyed, 2 more entered service. Allied intelligence estimated German submarine production at 30 boats per month. The Allies were losing the war at sea, and everyone knew it. The Dorchester had multiple problems, and every one of them was about to matter. First, the ship was overloaded. Designed to carry 400 passengers in peacetime, the Army had crammed 902 men aboard. That meant not enough life jackets, not enough lifeboats, not enough space to move during an emergency. The Army had issued 751 life jackets total. Do the math. 151 men had no life jackets at all. Second, the Dorchester was slow. Maximum speed, 13 knots. A German Type 7 U-boat could make 17 knots on the surface, 7.6 knots submerged. The Dorchester couldn't outrun a submarine. It couldn't outmaneuver one either. The ship's only defense was the escort cutters and luck. Third, the ship's compartments were a death trap. Narrow corridors, steep ladders, watertight doors that were supposed to prevent flooding, but trapped men below when they sealed. Most soldiers were sleeping in the lower decks when the torpedo hit. Getting topside meant navigating pitch-black passages filled with seawater, fuel oil, and panicking men. Fourth, the life jackets themselves were a problem. Standard-issue Type B5 Kapok life preservers. They worked, if you could get them on correctly in calm conditions with adequate light. In darkness, in freezing water, with the ship listing and men screaming, soldiers were putting them on backwards, upside down, not cinching the straps tight enough. A loose life jacket in 34-degree water was worthless. The cold would incapacitate you before the jacket could keep you afloat. The U-boat threat in this sector was well known. Allied intelligence had tracked multiple submarines operating between Newfoundland and Greenland. Just 2 weeks earlier, convoy SC-118 had been attacked by a wolf pack. 8 ships sunk. Over 600 men killed. The Dorchester's convoy commander knew U-boats were out there. The escort cutters were running sonar sweeps continuously. But U-223 had slipped through. Wechter had positioned his submarine perfectly. He'd fired 3 torpedoes. Only one hit, but one was enough. The torpedo struck the Dorchester's engine room at 12:55 a.m., tearing a 30-foot hole in the hull. The engine room crew died instantly. The ship's electrical system failed. Emergency lighting kicked in, but only in some sections. Most of the ship was completely dark. Water poured in at an estimated 5,000 gallons per minute. The Dorchester was sinking, and the pumps were dead. Captain Hans J. Danielson knew his ship had maybe 20 minutes, probably less. He ordered abandon ship. But here's the nightmare scenario that was unfolding. Most soldiers were trapped below deck. The passageways were jammed. Men were climbing over each other, fighting to reach the ladders. Some compartments were already flooded. Others were filling fast, and 151 men didn't have life jackets. The 4 chaplains heard the screaming. They moved toward it. The chaplains split up. Each moved to a different section of the ship, trying to reach the soldiers trapped below. They weren't giving orders. They weren't preaching. They were guiding men through the darkness, helping them find ladders, directing them topside. Private William B. Bednar, 19 years old from Chicago, was trapped in a flooded compartment. He later testified that Father Washington appeared in the doorway, water up to his waist, holding a flashlight. Washington grabbed Bednar's arm and pulled him toward the ladder. "This way, son. Keep moving. You're going to make it." Bednar made it to the deck. He had a life jacket. Barely secured, but he had one. Other men weren't as lucky. Grady Clark, a private from North Carolina, reached the main deck without a life jacket. He was panicking. The water below looked black and infinite. He knew what 34-degree water meant. He knew he had minutes, not hours. Clark later said he was ready to just jump without a jacket, take his chances. Then Rabbi Goode appeared next to him. Goode was wearing his life jacket. He unbuckled it, pulled it off, and handed it to Clark. "Take this," Goode said. "You need it more than I do." Clark tried to refuse. Goode physically put the jacket on him, cinched the straps tight, and pushed him toward the rail. "Go. Now." Clark survived. Goode didn't. This wasn't an isolated incident. All 4 chaplains were giving away their life jackets. Captain Fox found a soldier, name lost to history, frozen in fear near a lifeboat station. The kid couldn't have been more than 18. No life jacket. Fox took off his own jacket and strapped it onto the soldier. "You're going in the water," Fox told him. "This will keep you alive long enough for the cutters to find you." Reverend Poling encountered multiple men without jackets. He gave his away to a young private who'd lost his in the flooding. Poling helped the soldier into a lifeboat, then moved back toward the superstructure, looking for more men to help. Father Washington was doing the same thing. Witnesses reported seeing him distribute gloves, give away his own coat to a soldier in shock, and physically lift injured men toward the lifeboats. When his life jacket was gone, he kept working. John Ladd, a young soldier from Missouri, later testified about the scene on deck. "The chaplains were moving among us, calming people, helping with the lifeboats, praying with men who were too injured to move. I saw all 4 of them without life jackets. Someone asked Chaplain Fox why he gave his away. Fox said, 'The boys need them more than I do.' The Dorchester was listing badly now. The starboard rail was dipping toward the water. Lifeboats were being lowered, but several capsized immediately in the rough seas. Men were jumping from the deck, hitting the water, swimming toward the escort cutters. Some made it. Most didn't. The cold was killing faster than drowning. 14 minutes had passed since the torpedo hit. The ship had maybe 6 minutes left. The 4 chaplains moved toward each other near the ship's bridge. They weren't leaving. They'd given away their life jackets. They'd helped as many men as they could reach. Now they were out of options. What happened next was witnessed by dozens of survivors in the water and in lifeboats. The 4 chaplains, Fox, Goode, Poling, Washington, linked arms, Methodist, Jewish, Dutch Reformed, Catholic. 4 men from different backgrounds, different faiths, different cities. They stood together on the slanting deck as the Dorchester went down. And they started to pray. Private John Ladd was in the water, maybe 200 yards from the Dorchester, when he saw them. 4 figures standing together on the deck, arms linked, as the ship tilted further into the sea. He could hear them. They were praying, each in their own tradition, but together. "Our Father, who art in heaven. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu." The words carried across the water. Other survivors heard it too. Over a dozen men testified later about hearing the chaplains praying as the ship went down. The Coast Guard cutters Comanche, Tampa, and Escanaba were racing toward the survivors. Searchlights swept the water, illuminating a scene from hell. Men floating in oil-slicked seas, bodies already still, killed by the cold. Lifeboats overloaded and capsizing. Soldiers swimming toward the lights, some making it, others going under before the cutters could reach them. The Comanche's crew was pulling men from the water as fast as they could. The process was brutal. Sailors leaning over the rails with ropes and cargo nets. Survivors so numb from cold they couldn't grip the lines. Coast Guardsmen jumping into the freezing water to attach rescue harnesses to men who'd lost motor function. The Tampa was using every boat it had. Motor launches, whale boats, anything that could float. The crews knew the clock. 18 minutes in 34-degree water. That's the medical estimate for incapacitation. After 18 minutes, hypothermia shuts down your muscles. You can't swim. You can't hold on to a rope. You just float, conscious but paralyzed until you drown or your heart stops. 20 minutes after the torpedo hit, the Dorchester's bow lifted out of the water. The stern was completely submerged. Men still trapped inside were hammering on bulkheads. Some were blown free when internal compartments collapsed from water pressure. Most weren't. The four chaplains were still on deck, still linked together, still praying. Witnesses in the lifeboats later said they could see the chaplains clearly in the searchlights. 4 men, arms around each other's shoulders, facing the bow as it rose higher. They never broke formation. They never tried to jump. They stayed together. At 1:20 a.m., 25 minutes after the torpedo strike, the SS Dorchester went under. The bow pointed straight up for a moment, nearly vertical, then slid beneath the surface. The suction pulled debris, oil, and bodies down with it. The 4 chaplains disappeared with the ship. The rescue operation continued for another 3 hours. The Coast Guard cutters pulled 230 men from the water. Some were conscious. Many were semi-conscious from hypothermia. Several died on deck after rescue, too far gone for the medics to save. The final count, 672 dead. 902 men had been aboard. 230 survived. Among the dead, Captain George L. Fox, age 42, Rabbi Alexander D. Goode, age 31, Reverend Clark V. Poling, age 32, Father John P. Washington, age 34. Not one of the 4 chaplains' bodies was ever recovered. The survivors who'd received the chaplains' life jackets, men like Grady Clark, the private from North Carolina, made it to the Coast Guard cutters alive. They owed their survival to 4 men who'd chosen to die in their place. U-223 escaped. Captain Lieutenant Wächter reported the sinking to U-boat headquarters and moved to the next patrol sector. German Naval Command recorded it as a successful attack on an Allied transport. Just another victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. They had no idea what they'd actually done. The survivors reached Greenland on February 4th. The Coast Guard cutters docked at Narsarsuaq. The rescued men were treated for hypothermia, frostbite, and shock. Several more died in the hospital from injuries sustained during the sinking. Then the stories started coming out. Private Grady Clark told investigators about Rabbi Goode handing him a life jacket. John Ladd described watching the 4 chaplains praying together as the ship went down. William Bednar testified about Father Washington pulling him from a flooded compartment. Every survivor who'd interacted with the chaplains reported the same thing. The chaplains had given away their life jackets and stayed behind to help others. The War Department released the news on February 6th. The headline spread across American newspapers. 4 chaplains die heroes in torpedoing. The story hit harder than most war casualties. 4 men from different faiths dying together. Methodist, Jewish, Dutch Reformed, Catholic, arms linked in prayer as their ship sank. The symbolism was impossible to miss. This was 1943. America was fighting a war against Nazi Germany's racial ideology. And here were 4 American chaplains, including a rabbi, demonstrating that religious differences meant nothing when it came to sacrifice and brotherhood. The Army posthumously awarded all 4 men the Distinguished Service Cross and the Purple Heart. But it wasn't enough. There was no existing military decoration that adequately recognized what they'd done. These men hadn't died in combat. They'd deliberately chosen death to save others. Congress tried to award them the Medal of Honor. The legislation failed. Technically, the chaplains hadn't performed their actions in combat with an enemy. The requirements were specific. Giving away life jackets during a sinking didn't qualify. So in 1960, Congress created a new recognition, the Four Chaplains Medal. A special medal authorized by Congress but not technically a military decoration. Only 4 were ever awarded: Fox, Goode, Poling, Washington. The medal's design showed 4 chaplains standing together. No rank insignia, no denominational symbols, just 4 men, equal in sacrifice. The impact on military chaplaincy was immediate and lasting. The story became required teaching at the U.S. Army Chaplain School. Every chaplain since 1943 has learned about the 4 chaplains. The lesson isn't subtle. Your job is to serve everyone, regardless of faith. Your role is to put others first, even if it costs you everything. Chapel of the Four Chaplains was dedicated in Philadelphia in 1951. It's an interfaith chapel. No single denomination. The stained glass windows show the 4 chaplains together. Thousands visit every year. The Four Chaplains Memorial Foundation was established to promote interfaith understanding and selfless service. It awards medals annually to Americans who demonstrate similar values. Recipients include Desmond Doss, the Medal of Honor recipient who saved 75 men at Okinawa, and countless others who've risked their lives for others. February 3rd is Four Chaplains Day. It's not a federal holiday, but the U.S. Army recognizes it. Military chapels hold memorial services. Veterans organizations gather to remember. Here's why this matters in 2025. The 4 chaplains demonstrated something that feels increasingly rare. Not just courage, though they had that. Not just faith, though they had that too. They demonstrated that when everything goes to hell, the things that divide us, religion, background, where we're from, don't matter. What matters is who you choose to be when the ship is sinking. Fox, Goode, Poling, and Washington had maybe 20 minutes from torpedo impact to when the Dorchester went down. 20 minutes to decide who they were. They chose to give away their life jackets. They chose to help others escape. They chose to die together rather than live separately. 672 men died on the Dorchester. But because of 4 chaplains who gave away their life jackets, 230 men made it home. That's not a story about religion. That's a story about what humans are capable of when they decide that someone else's life matters more than their own.